Schindler's bookkeeper, but really he was Schindler's genius. And he brokered a lot of those deals to get Jews on the Schindler's List. So he's sort of the genius in hiding. He is the conscience of Oskar Schindler.
What did Goethe say about this? You just told him how many people you needed and you're not buying them. You're buying them, you're paying him for each of these names.
If you were still working for me, I'd expect you to talk me out of it. It's costing me a fortune.
He gives to Oskar Schindler something Oscar's never had before, which is an honest friendship. He never had an honest friendship with a woman. He never had an honest friendship with anybody in the Nazi Party. But with this Jew, he had an honest friendship.
They could shut us down and send us back to Auschwitz.
I'll call around, find out where we can buy shells. Ask them off as ours.
I don't see the difference. Whether they're made here or somewhere else.
Don't see a difference? I see a difference.
Well, you'll lose a lot of money, that's the
Fewer
difference.
shells will be made.
About that.
Stern, if this factory ever produces a shell that can actually be fired, I'll be very unhappy.
Schindler was a great deal maker. Schindler was a great CEO. But it was only the war that he was able to control a measure of his own destiny. He failed at every business following the war, and he failed at every business preceding the war. It was only this moment belonged to him. And the end result was he rescued 1,200 human beings who gave birth to many thousands of other human beings. There are more Jews and offspring from those survivors because of what Schindler did than there are Jews today in Poland. My grandmother taught English to Hungarian Holocaust survivors when I was only 3 years old, living in Cincinnati, Ohio, and I learned to count. I learned my numbers. We didn't have Sesame Street in those days, but I learned my numbers based on all the numbers tattooed on their arms. And I had one man that used to, to say, this is a 2 and that's a 5, and then he said, I'll do a magic trick for you. You want to see a magic trick? And I said, yeah. And he said, this is a 6, and now it's a 9, and now it's a 6, and now it's a 9, and now it's a 6. So I'll never forget that. I was a little kid, 3, 4 years old. Never forget that. The only movie I've really made that has had the most extraordinary second chance at life is Schindler's List. And when I started the Shoah Foundation to raise awareness about the Holocaust through the testimonies of people that we interviewed who survived the Holocaust. We now have almost 52,000 survivor testimonies done in 65 languages in 38 countries from all around the world. And I formed an organization called the Survivors of the Shoah Visual History Foundation, which interviewed, indexed, and cataloged, and now is disseminating, this kind of invaluable archive to schools. And that's the whole point of why I did this. But it's the only time I've made a movie where something better than the movie came along because of the opportunity to tell that story. That the Shoah Foundation was probably the reason the Schindler's List was made. And in that respect, Schindler's List is the most important film I've ever made. And the Shoah Foundation, outside of my family, is the most important work I've ever done inside the community. What motivated me to do Private Ryan was, this was a tribute to my dad. This was 100% for my dad. When I got the Oscar for Ryan, I said, Dad, this is for you. This is yours. I mean, I told my dad many, many years ago that I was going to make a World War II movie for him. The only thing that disappointed my dad was it was about Europe, not Asia. And my dad said, but Steve, you didn't tell my story. What about the 490th Bomb Squadron, What about those who flew the hump, my friends who were lost flying the hump, I said, no, Dad, you're right. I didn't tell that story, but this is for your generation. I remember having the first industry screening of Raiders of the Lost Ark. And I had 2 director friends of mine who I really respect saying, wow, the greatest sequence of this movie is the first 15 minutes for that rolling ball and the spiders on the guy's back. And I kept thinking, oh, my God, I topped myself in Raiders, and the movie never recovered. And I felt I was about to do the same thing when I shot Saving Private Ryan. I didn't quite know what that opening sequence was going to be because I shot the whole movie in continuity. And I also certainly shot the whole first sequence in continuity. The first shot of the movie is Tom Hanks' hand shaking his canteen to his face, reveal his captain's bars, and show it's Tom Hanks and pull the camera back in the Higgins boat. That was the first shot of the movie. And I went right through to the end of the picture in continuity, which meant that I was making up the entire opening attack of Omaha Beach, the landings. When I say made it up, I didn't make up things that didn't actually happen, that Stephen Ambrose hadn't written about or other veterans hadn't informed me of. But I did the whole thing stream of consciousness. I had no storyboards, no pre-visualization on the computer. Did the whole thing from actually up here in a weird way, being informed by all the literature I'd read about the up-close and personal experience of what it was like to survive that day on dog green Omaha Beach. So I didn't know it was going to take 4 weeks to shoot 26 minutes of movie. I didn't know it was going to take 24 days, 6-day weeks in Ireland. And when people came over to me and said, are we going to be done next week? I'd say, I don't know, because I've just gotten to the seawall. I haven't even gotten up to the Vierville Draw yet. Ask me when I'm halfway up the Vierville Draw where we're going to be. I don't know. I couldn't give anybody an answer, because the whole thing was being improvised in a very safe, rational, controlled way, but improvised nonetheless. And I think if anything gave that scene its impact, its first-person, in-your-face impact, it was because I didn't know what was going to happen next, just like real combat.
Jesus! Come on. Lucky bastard. Move it. Keep it moving. Got it?
This particular movie, we felt like we were making a contribution. We were actually thinking, without patting ourselves on the back, that this movie was going to come out. And I thought nobody would go to see this picture. They might see a few people go the first weekend because Tom Hanks is the star, but they're going to be so turned off by the violence, they're not going to come back the second weekend. And I thought this would be a one-weekend wonder, but I thought the film was going to add something to inform audiences what soldiers have to really go through when they're in the hellfire of combat. And the straight-line narrative mission of 9 guys risking their lives to save one was compelling for me. Private Ryan is based on a series of actual brothers who were lost in World War II. The most famous, of course, being the Sullivan brothers. But then there was the Nyland brothers, who were the kind of role models for the story of Private Ryan. And these are brothers that were lost in Normandy, lost overseas in the Pacific Theater of Operation, and who High Command determined they needed to actually send the surviving Nyland back home so he wouldn't, like the Sullivans, become a casualty and totally wipe out the Nyland family.
Juden. 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 I'm Juden, you know? Juden.
I really enjoyed making the movie, and I was guilty about the enjoyment because it was bloody, and it was maybe the most violent picture I've ever made. I was just praying that the final battle in Rommel was going to at least hold some kind of a candle to the opening sequence so that at least we'd have big bookends. And I think it does. I think the last battle is every bit as good as the first battle. And I think the last battle was better than the first battle because you didn't know who the characters were in the first battle. They were, except for Tom Hanks, everybody was anonymous to the audience. In the last battle, you invested 2 hours and 33 minutes of your time in this squad, and you lost some of your favorite characters, and now the battle was emotional and was personal on the part of the audience, you see. And the audience needed to know a lot about Captain Miller, especially because we were going to allow Captain Miller to make the supreme sacrifice at the end of the movie.
They're tank busters, sir. P-51s.
Angels on our shoulders.
What, sir?